Alright, what's up everybody? So we're going to be doing something a little bit different here on the channel. I'm introducing storytime videos. Basically what the series is going to be is just me telling stories about my life and just random things I want to talk about. It's not going to be, it's probably going to be pretty often I'm going to be doing these. I plan on posting this sometime in January. I'm recording this in December. And it's just gonna be stories about my life and personal experiences, because it's like kind of like an online journal of sorts. What really made me want to do this is I'm gonna be 30 years old this year, in 2025. I'm gonna be 30 years old, which is really wild to me and crazy. I can't believe that I'm actually gonna be 30 years old. Now, to a lot of people, it's like, oh, wow, that's just an age. Why does it matter? But it's weird when you've been 20 years old, under 30, and, you've been 20 years old for so long. I feel like I've been 20 years old for, like, 30 years, But that's a story for a different time. This first video is going to be a pretty personal one to me. It's going to be just a story about my grandparents, both on my mom and dad's side. So let's just get right into it. So my first, I'll start on my dad's side because it's probably gonna be the shorter version of it. My mother's side is gonna be a lot longer because I was a lot closer to my grandparents, and it all makes sense when I explain. So my grandparents on my dad's side, my grandfather on my dad's side, I've never actually met. He was very old when when my father was born. I think my father told me that his father, my grandfather on his side, was in his 50s when my dad was born, and he died actually before I was even born, before my mom and my dad even got married. He died, so I didn't really get to meet him and know him, which is kind of unfortunate. But my grandmother on his side, which I call my Nana because we're Italian, I didn't really have a whole lot. I don't remember a whole lot about her because I didn't really get to know her for that long. She died when I was very young. I was probably 10 years old or so, maybe a little bit younger when she died. And but I do remember, and it was kind of sad how she died. She basically got dementia. And for those who don't know what that is, it's a very how do I describe it? A very unfortunate way to go. It's basically you lose your mind and you forget people, you forget your life. Your brain just rots. It's a very evil disease. Your brain just rots until you eventually, you die. And my Nana had that, but before she had that, I remember at a very young age. I do remember her healthy, and I remember her unhealthy. When she was healthy, it was a very short time that she was healthy for. But I do remember, and she did smoke a lot too, so that also didn't help. But I remember when she was healthy, a very little bit of when she was healthy, because we didn't really get to see her that often. My best memory is she would make homemade S cookies, which are just cookies in a shape of an S. You can get them in a grocery store. They're just called S cookies. I don't know if they have them in other countries, but in America they're called S cookies. And I remember I would go there all the time as a kid, and she would always give us S cookies, and that's how we would bond. We didn't really talk much. I didn't really talk much because she would watch us, my brothers and I, and we'd do our own thing. We'd play outside, and really didn't really get to have a real relationship with her, unfortunately. And I remember when she was unhealthy and it was really bad, it got to a point where she couldn't even talk anymore. That's how unhealthy, how bad the dementia was. She would just make noises, and point, and she barely move or anything. She was in a wheel, she was confined to basically a potato, a vegetable. She was confined to a wheelchair, and she couldn't even move herself on the wheelchair. We had to have an aide help her live because she literally couldn't take care of herself, and it was really unfortunate. Like, she couldn't even go to the bathroom by herself, and it was hard. It was hard on me, even though I barely, knew her, because I saw my dad suffer, and because that was like his only parent, basically, that he had left. and watching, the distress in him. He would say, "Ma, ma, ma," and her only response would be like, I'm not making fun of her, but like that's how she would respond. She'd just make noises. She'd be, and it was really hard, because I could see it in my dad's face. He tried to stay strong, but I remember seeing in his face how upset he was. My dad was a mama's boy. He was a mama's boy, and it was very hard to see my dad like that, because I was, it was just very hard. Now, my grandparents on my mother's side, however, I was very close with. I have the fortunate privilege to have them in my life as long as I did. My grandfather died, actually the 10-year anniversary is this year, when I'm posting this in January 2025. He died in 2015. Another, sad way he went. He had a heart attack. And basically he died. It's my mom's parents that I'm talking about right now. And he basically died in my mom's arms because he got sick too. Not to the point where my nana, but like it got to a point where he had very bad kidneys, and he had to go on this stuff called dialysis, which basically takes out all the bad in your kidneys. And you go there and they get the badness out of your kidneys. And he, about 6 months of that, and then he eventually died in my mother's arms. He had a heart attack and died in my mother's arms, which was really sad. And I remember I wasn't there when it happened. I was at work. And then I got off work and we went to the hospital. And he was on life support. And he was alive, but he wasn't. Like, the life support, he was alive, but, like, he was basically a vegetable. Like, he was conscious, but he couldn't do anything. He was just laying there, and he couldn't talk, couldn't walk, couldn't even move his eyes. And I guess I should have said the good first before the how he died part. But basically, growing up, my grandparents on my mom's side helped raise us, my brothers and I. While my parents worked, I would stay at my grandparents' house, and I was really close to them, growing up with them. And we eventually moved. And my grandparents, where they lived in the city they lived in, we were going to leave them behind. But what happened was we bought our house, and my dad actually built an actual legitimate, I'm not kidding, an actual apartment. Because our house, we're not rich, but our house was pretty big. All right. And my dad built pretty much an apartment in our basement for them, my grandparents. And my grandparents moved in with us on my mom's side. They moved in with us, and that's when I got real close with them. Because I was a lot older. I was, probably like 16 at the time or whatever, when I actually started to develop a relationship with them. Because growing up as a kid, I didn't really talk to them. We didn't really talk. They just watched us, and we'd go in the playroom or whatever, and that's how. But when I became 16 is when I really got a relationship with them. And I remember my grandfather, he would always talk to us and, talk to me. All right, sorry about that, guys. I had a customer. Anyways, so yeah, I was really close to my grandparents on my mom's side. And, like, I remember my greatest memories of my grandfather specifically is, I guess my grandmother too, because she was involved. My grandfather and my grandmother every Saturday. Oh yeah, so I don't even know where I was. Sorry. So yeah, my father built an apartment with them. An apartment in our house in our basement, and they lived with us. My grandparents moved in when we moved to our new house. My grandparents moved in with us, and they lived in the basement. It sounds bad, but trust me, it was an actual. You couldn't tell it was a basement. It looked like it functioned and looked just like an actual apartment. So my dad worked in construction a lot. So he helped build it, and he built it for them, so they can live with us, which was real nice, because I think, I wouldn't have been as close to them as I was had they not moved in. So anyways, so my grandparents, every Saturday, they would go on date night, which was every Saturday. And I remember one time they asked me, they go, "Hey, wanna come with us?" And I was like, yeah. And, I don't remember the conversations and stuff, but, like, that day is when I became close with my grandparents. Because I was always a shy kid growing up, and that'll be another story for a different time, my shyness and how I overcame it. I mean, I'm still am shy, but like I'm a lot less shy now than what I was. And believe it or not, I was shy to talk to my grandparents. I never had conversation with them because I was shy to talk to them. And them asking me to go with them on date night actually broke my shyness with them, and I was actually able to talk to them, have conversation with them, and they told me stories and stuff, and they would it was great. And I remember a fond memory I would have is every day I would bring the mail to my grandparents. I would go downstairs and bring them the mail. And my grandpa, we would have conversations. I would sit down with them, and we would just talk and get to know each other. And the biggest regret I have in my entire life was, I'd say, 2 or 3 years before my grandfather died. Or maybe it was probably a year before he died. He said to me one day, after I gave him the mail and we talked, and I left, I went back upstairs. He went, come visit me more. He would say, visit us more. I love you. Come visit me more. And I never did. I would still just visit that one day and give him the mail, and that was it. And they got to a point where I just, not because of malicious intent, I just stopped giving them the mail. My other brother would do it or whatever. And I never really got to say goodbye to my grandfather. He died, and then we had his funeral. And my grandmother was moved out. She moved with my mom's sister because she felt lonely because no one visited her. I would visit every so often, not every day, but I would visit at least a couple times a week. And she said to me, she was like, "Joey, you're the only one that actually cares about me and loves me." And I felt real bad for her, And I tried to convince her to stay. I tried to convince her to stay with us and not move in with my mom's sister, my aunt. And she didn't listen. And she would visit very often because she didn't like living with my aunt, because my aunt ignored her too. My aunt was actually, that's another story for a different time, how my aunt treated her, and how my mom and her got into a fight, whatever. And then my grandfather died in 2015. And my grandmother died in 2021. She died. And I miss them every day because I was super close. They were basically my second parents, and I would talk to them all the time. And I was super close with them. And it's a shame. It's been 10 years since my grandfather died, and about 4 since my grandmother died. And I miss them every day. There's not a day that goes by where I don't think about them. I love them so much, and I miss them a lot. But anyways, I'm going to cut this here. This is basically just an introduction / first story. I probably will do these every week until I eventually run out of stories. So thanks everybody for coming by, and I will see you guys next week for another story time video. Thanks guys, take care.